and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. It will soon be official. When the clock strikes midnight, we will be under a partial government shutdown for the second time this year. Congressional leaders spent the day scrambling to beat the clock and get their record-breaking spending deal through, but the objection of one senator delaying the vote, bringing the Senate to a standstill. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is working it live on Capitol Hill to tell us what is going on this evening. And right now, Mike, it sounds like not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot, Shannon. Indeed, the deadline is approaching, but Kentucky Senator Rand Paul wanted to protest additional spending in this budget agreement. Earlier, we had Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer warning Senator Paul he was playing with fire, while Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell made this direct appeal to Paul.
I understand my friend and colleague from Kentucky does not join the president in supporting the bill. And it's his right, of course, to vote against the bill. But I would argue that it's time to vote.
We could move forward and get a bill done and not risk a government shutdown. We're in risky territory here, as my both friends from Kentucky know. So if that would accomplish the same thing, not hold us up here, let the House do its will.
Paul wanted to make his point about excessive government spending, even though it is not expected to change the outcome.
So it's a canard to say we can't have one amendment and can't spend 15 minutes debating whether or not it's good for the country to add $1 trillion in debt. So, Madam President, I object.
At one point, things got really tense when fellow Republican Tom Tillis of North Carolina blasted Senator Paul, accusing him of wasting time and for making government employees sweat about a possible government shutdown.
So employees out there, I apologize on behalf of people that can't give you certainty right now at 9 o'clock. But at 1 a.m., you'll have it. And I'm sorry that we have to go through this process, and we seem to go through it far too often.
Earlier, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi was in an awkward spot. Pelosi negotiated the budget agreement, but was speaking against it for an unrelated issue, immigration.
Many of our priorities are in the bill. I have an unease with it and hope that the Speaker will man up and decide that we in the House can also have what's Mitch McConnell guaranteed in the Senate, a vote on the floor. I'm pleased with the product. I'm not pleased with the process. So you won't vote for it? No, I won't.
Recognizing he will need Democrat votes, Speaker Paul Ryan tried to reassure Pelosi's rank-and-file members.
To anyone who doubts my intention to solve this problem and bring up a DACA and immigration reform bill, do not. We will bring a solution to the floor, one that the president will sign. We must pass this budget agreement first, though, so that we can get on to that.
House Republican leaders are warning their members they may be voting in the 3 to 6 a.m. range, perhaps a little later. If so, government employees will be waking up to find out whether they should go to work or whether we're in a partial government shutdown. Shannon?
All right. I understand the Senate is convened now until 12:01. They'll start a fresh day and tackle this right after midnight. Mike, we know you're on it, so thank you for keeping us up to date. All right. We're joined now by Republican Senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, who has just walked off the Senate floor. What is the mood like over there? Because I got to say, I think that your colleague, Senator Rand Paul, has done something that it's been tough to do lately, which is to get bipartisan agreement on something. Everyone's mad at him, including you.
Well, it's not that I'm mad at Rand. He's very sincere, but I think he's doing a very dangerous thing. To President Trump, if you're watching tonight.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Thank you and God bless you for fighting for the men and women in the military. By the sunrise tomorrow, I won't get much sleep, but the military will have $160 billion they desperately need. We're spending at an all-time low on our military since World War II. More people have been killed in training accidents than in combat, and Donald Trump is delivering on his campaign promise to rebuild the military. General Mattis likes this budget deal. And to Senator Paul, the deficit is a problem. The debt is a problem. Entitlement reform is necessary, and I applaud you for being courageous enough to talk about delaying retirement and means testing benefits. But on national security, you have been wrong at every turn. You do not understand what our military has been facing since 2011. There are planes that can't fly, there are soldiers that can't deploy, there are families that have to miss their family members way too much because we don't have enough people in the Army, the Navy, Air Force, and the Marine Corps, and we're about to finish that. So he can play his little games, but when the sun comes up tomorrow, the military is going to be flush with cash, and God bless those who are doing the fighting.
All right, they're not the only ones, though, because this is a record-breaking spending package. There are plenty. Well, according to all of the numbers in history until now, I mean, this is going to be the biggest package out there, and a lot of that is domestic spending as well, and the Democrats have gotten a lot of what they asked for on that front. So you know there are deficit hawks out there. Rand Paul's not alone. I mean, there are plenty of folks over in the House side, too, that have big problems with it and say that's not why the GOP was sent to Washington. They were sent to cut back government and cut back spending, and this package, they say, doesn't do it.
I don't know why they were sent, but I know why I was sent from South Carolina to make sure we can defend the nation. The number one priority of the federal government, above all else, is to defend the nation. And look at the threats we face. There's a war going on in Afghanistan. President Trump has taken the gloves off, and we're pounding ISIL. We're pounding the Taliban. God bless you, President Trump. And you're fighting for those who need more money and more resources, more people in the military to help those who've suffered so long. So this is the number one priority for me. I'm a Republican. The number one priority is to fund the military, and this will do it.
What do you say to those, though, including some military leaders in the past who have said the national debt and where we are with respect to China and other countries that own us in some sense, that's a national security issue as well?
Tell them. Go where the money's at. 2/3 of the federal budget is Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid, and interest on the debt. 1/3 of the federal budget is discretionary spending. Half of that 1/3 is military spending. You could wipe out the Department of Defense, not balance the budget. You got to delay retirement for young people. You got to ask people like me to pay more into Medicare and take less from Social Security. Rand Paul knows that. I congratulate him for being strong on entitlements, but when it comes to national security, he's been a disaster. He said tonight the best way to give the military a pay raise is to withdraw from Afghanistan. Name one general who believes it's smart to withdraw from Afghanistan. President Trump, you're doing the right thing by taking the fight to the enemy in Afghanistan. The last time we ignored Afghanistan, we got 9/11. And the only way you're going to prevent 9/11s in the future is to have our soldiers over there protecting us here. And our military has suffered since 2011 under these budget cuts. And tonight we begin to correct that problem. God bless Donald Trump. And Rand Paul is standing in the way of President Trump, Commander-in-Chief Trump, fulfilling a campaign promise to rebuild the military. And General Mattis said the following: no enemy in the field has done more damage to the American military than the budget cuts and continuing resolutions authored by Congress. So Congress has done more damage to our military than any enemy in the field, and that's going to change tonight.
Okay, so for you, the price tag is not a concern. The long-term impact on the deficit.
The long-term impact of the deficit comes from entitlement reform. You could wipe out the Department of Defense and not even move the debt needle. Here's what I'm saying. When it comes to military spending, it's the most important thing we've done. We're spending less on the military per GDP-wise than any time since World War II. Does that really make sense to have the smallest Navy since 1915, the smallest Army since 1940? General Mattis has been begging us to get off the sidelines and get back in the game and give the warfighter what they need. You know, President Trump listens to the general. The rest of us have listened to the general. Senator Paul thinks he knows more about the military than those who are in the military. He's never been to Afghanistan, so I don't want to hear from him what it takes to win a war in Afghanistan when he's never been there.
Well, he says he's listening to his constituents, and he's not the only one. So let me ask you.
I don't know who his constituents are, but they're not my constituents.
Okay, well, you do come from two different states, South Carolina and Kentucky.
But you got to listening to people in Kentucky.
You got to go back over there now.
I'm going to go fight for our military. To those in the military, by the sunrise tomorrow, you're going to have more resources. Your commander-in-chief is coming to your aid, and Congress is going to clean up his act.
Are y'all going to hug? Will you hug it out? A little bit. Will there be a kumbaya moment at some point?
It ain't about him. It ain't about me. It's about those who are doing the fighting. We're nobodies when it comes to the war on terrorism. Nobody in Congress is going to protect your family from radical Islam. The people in the field doing the fighting are going to protect you from radical Islam. And tonight, Congress is going to finally help them after 7 years of doing nothing.
Well, you have spent many decades in the military as well.
33 years.
Good to see you.
Fired
up. And I like that because now you have the energy.
Ready to vote.
You've got the energy to go back and work past midnight, past your bedtime.
They got the energy to fight. I got the energy to vote.
All right, Senator Graham, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. All right, Virginia Senator Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, has often promised that the committee's investigation into Donald Trump's alleged ties to Russia would be fair and bipartisan. But brand new text messages obtained exclusively by Fox News are raising questions about a relationship between Warner and a lobbyist representing a Russian oligarch. Warner apparently tried to contact Christopher Steele, the author of the infamous anti-Trump dossier, through the lobbyist. There's a whole lot more to this story, though, and there is bipartisan response. Ed Henry is here to sort it out for us. Good evening, Ed.
That's right, Shannon. And breaking tonight, President Trump is weighing in on this story just a few moments ago, and Republican Senator Marco Rubio out on Twitter tonight defending Mark Warner, a Democrat who has been leading one of the many investigations into what happened with Russia in the 2016 election. And as you mentioned, he's been investigating the president's ties to Russia, and Warner himself had extensive contact, we've learned, with a lobbyist for a Russian oligarch who offered him access to Christopher Steele, the former British spy. And in fact, what we are learning tonight is that Warner texted he would, quote, rather not have a paper trail in case he could not seal an agreement with the former British spy. Steele has not agreed to an interview with the panel yet. Warner began texting with this lobbyist, Adam Waldman, in February 2017 about brokering a deal with the Justice Department to get the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, to the U.S. to potentially face criminal charges. That went nowhere. Warner and Waldman also exchanged dozens of texts about possible testimony from Waldman's primary client, Russian billionaire, you see him there, Oleg Deripaska, who had his visa revoked by the State Department because of charges he has ties to Russian organized crime, which he denies. Warner was intent, though, in these messages on connecting directly with Steele without anyone else being in the loop initially. An aide to the Republican chairman, Senator Richard Burr, now tells Fox he was aware of the contact Warner made, but added, quote, I don't believe he was aware of the content of the text messages. In one message, Warner said, quote, we have so much to discuss. You need to be careful, but we can help our country. He said that in a text to Waldman. Waldman texted back, I'm in. Interesting, because Waldman, his firm here in Washington, has ties to Hillary Clinton. Secrecy seemed important to Warner on March 29th, when the lobbyist revealed Steele wanted a bipartisan letter from Warner and Burr before talking. Warner texted, hey, can't we do brief off-the-record call today before letter so I can frame letter? He texted that about Steele, who had put together the anti-Trump dossier, of course. Warner added, okay, but I would like to do a preliminary call, you, me, and him, no one else, before the letter, just so we have to trail to start. Want to discuss scope first before letter, no leaks. Waldman noted that Steele was very concerned about leaks, so Warner texted on March 30th, quote, we want to do this right. Private in London, don't want to send a letter yet, because if we can't get agreement, would rather not have paper trail. Now, the committee got the text from Waldman last September, and a Warner aide acknowledged Warner and Burr revealed their text to their colleagues in October because, quote, they realized out of context it doesn't look great. But aides to Warner and Burr stressed the chairman was in the loop. The senators gave us a joint statement saying, quote, from the beginning of our investigation, we have taken each step in a bipartisan way. We intend to continue to do so. Leaks of incomplete information out of context by anyone, inside or outside our committee, are unacceptable. The Senate Intel panel has been in possession of this material for several months. The full committee has had access to the material and been briefed on its content. Committee investigators have pursued all relevant investigative leads related to this material. Now, Waldman did not return calls today seeking comment. He runs the Endeavor Group. He signed a $40,000 monthly retainer in 2009 and 2010 to petition the government on behalf of that Russian billionaire. There are reports that Deripaska, who sued Paul Manafort over a failed business deal, has information to share. But last May, the Senate and House Intel panels decided not to give him legal immunity. We mentioned at the top that there's a lot of reaction to this tonight. First, Marco Rubio is out there with this tweet. You can see right there, Senator Warner fully disclosed this to the committee 4 months ago, has had zero impact on our work. He links to our story. The president, a few minutes ago, had a much different view. Wow, Senator Mark Warner got caught having extensive contact with a lobbyist for a Russian oligarch. Warner did not want a, quote, paper trail on a private meeting in London. He requested with Steele of fraudulent dossier fame. All tied in, the president says, to crooked Hillary. So the bottom line, Marco Rubio, who's a member of the Intel panel, is defending Warner and saying, look, this was disclosed to Republicans and Democrats last October. The question tonight, though, Shannon, is why months before that, Warner was saying by text message, I don't want anyone to know. I don't want a paper trail. Shannon.
All right, Ed, thank you for digging in.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Now we have Republicans hand in hand with Democrats offering us trillion-dollar deficits. I can't, in all good honesty and all good faith, just look the other way because my party is now complicit in the deficits. But really, who's to blame? Both parties.
That was Kentucky Senator Rand Paul on the Senate floor early this evening, holding up a vote to move forward with a funding package to keep the government open. For reaction to all this and all the big stories coming out of Washington at this hour, we head back to Capitol Hill. We're going to talk with Arizona Congressman Republican Andy Biggs. He joins us live. Congressman, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Shannon. Good to be with you.
All right, I know you're busy over there and waiting for the next round of votes and what's going to happen if this gets through the Senate and gets to you. And I know that there are other hurdles if it makes it that far. But let's first talk about the fact that I had Senator Lindsey Graham on just moments ago, and he said when I pressed him about the deficit and what this spending impact would be, he said we have to make a priority of military spending. It's been unfair to them to leave them lurching from shutdown to shutdown. He says he's all about making that priority. The rest of the deal he can live with because of solving that problem. Your take?
Yeah, well, here's the deal. I agree with them. We need to get out of the CR process because it harms the military. But what he didn't mention to you is that they've had a budget, the 12 budget bills that took care of the military spending for a full year for about 5 months now, and they've done nothing about it. And he didn't mention that 3 days ago, the House voted to send a full year funding CR to the Senate, all other spending being held even, but full funding for the military. And this is what we got back, is a massive increase in spending and the military. And what I see here is he's using the military as a lever to get all this additional spending in. It's not necessary. It shouldn't be there. It's going to bankrupt us ultimately if we keep spending like that. But, you know, we took care of the military. We just needed the Senate to act responsibly.
All right, here's what the president said, because he is of the same mind about this military issue. He says the budget agreement today, and this was yesterday, is so important for our great military. It ends the dangerous sequester and gives Secretary Mattis what he needs to keep America great. Republicans and Democrats must support our troops and support this bill. So if in its current form it makes it to you, are you a no vote?
Yeah, I'm absolutely a no vote. Look, I voted 3 days ago to fully fund the military. And when we got it back, people are talking about $300 billion, but that is just the cap increase. They don't mention the debt limit is rescinded effectively, so you can spend as much as you want. And then also, they don't include things like the disaster relief, et cetera, which takes us actually over $500 billion in increased spending. That's going to give us probably a projected deficit, structural deficit for this year, about $1.2 to $1.3 trillion. I'm for fully funding the military. I don't think Rand Paul, I don't think Mike Lee, I don't think any of us who oppose this, and by the way, there'll be probably 50 to 80 Republicans in the House that oppose it. It's not because of the military spending. It's because of the bankruptcy that looms because of all this other accelerated spending. So we need to fund the military, absolutely, but the mechanisms are in place to do that without breaking the bank on the other side.
Okay, so why are they unconvinced that there is a solution that doesn't involve all this domestic spending?
Well, because they would rather go to a 60, they're relying on a 60-vote rule instead of relying on a 51-vote rule in the Senate. And so they need to bring the Democrats on. The Democrats want a mess of money, and the Republicans are saying, okay, we'll give you whatever you want. And so they didn't do a process where you can have open rules, so you can have amendments, et cetera. And so what you end up with is massive spending, both domestically and also for the military.
Okay, so if this makes it to the House in its current form, do you think there are enough no votes to keep it from proceeding, and then we're back to square one with no government funding?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's enough no votes to do that. I think that it'll be fairly close, but I think that it'll pass with a significant number of yes votes.
Okay, well, we will be watching overnight, as we know you are busy there at work on the Hill. Thank you very much, Congressman. Good to see you.
Thanks, Shannon. Good to see you.
All right, more tonight on the FISA memo fallout. Senators Grassley and Graham's declassified criminal referral for the dossier author seems to bolster claims in the Republican House intel memo. Corey Lewandowski joins us live. He'll weigh in on that. Plus, we'll ask him why Democrats on the House Intel Committee say he is breaking a pledge to them to answer their questions. One of President Trump's top aides, Staff Secretary Rob Porter, announced his resignation yesterday after two of his ex-wives went public with allegations of domestic abuse. Now there are growing questions about how much White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and other senior White House staffers knew about those claims before the women went public. Correspondent Lauren Blanchard joins us now live with the latest revelations. Good evening, Lauren.
Yeah, good evening, Shannon. Well, Rob Porter is out. It's the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, who is now facing heat for how he handled the White House's response. In a statement right after the news broke, Kelly said, "Rob Porter is a man of true integrity and honor, and I can't say enough good things about him. He is a friend, a confidant, and a trusted professional. I am proud to serve alongside him." But then this photo emerged of Porter's ex-wife, Colby Holderness, with a black eye she alleges happened during a hotel fight. After the photo came out, the White House says Kelly became, quote, fully aware of the accusations and released a new statement, reading in part, "I was shocked by the new allegations released today against Rob Porter. There is no place for domestic violence in our society." And new tonight, Kelly sending a letter obtained by Fox to White House staff, part of which reads, "While we are all processing the shocking and troubling allegations made against a former White House staffer, I want you to know that we all take matters of domestic violence very seriously. Domestic violence is abhorrent and has no place in our society." But some wonder what Kelly knew about Porter's alleged violent past before the story went public.
This is part of an ongoing investigation. We trust the background check process, and the Chief of Staff does not get detailed updates about what may or may not have been alleged.
If John Kelly's covering this up, he needs to be held accountable. No, if he has to justify what he did, why he did it, and he better have a really good reason. Otherwise, he's gone too.
The White House has admitted it could have done better with the Porter situation, but it's not the only misstep for the Chief of Staff this week. He added fuel to the DACA controversy for comments some see as racist. While defending the president's immigration proposal, Kelly said some dreamers may not have signed up for the program because they were, quote, too lazy or too afraid. Shannon?
All right, Lauren Blanchard with the latest there on those developments. Thank you. Meanwhile, the partisan dispute over the FISA memo and alleged government surveillance abuse was given new life when Senators Grassley and Graham released their declassified criminal referral for the author of the so-called dirty dossier. Details in that letter reveal more about how the FBI and the Justice Department allegedly used research compiled by a former British spy that they say is mostly still unverified to carry out surveillance on a former Trump campaign advisor. Joining me now to weigh in is former Trump campaign manager and current chief strategist for America First Action, Corey Lewandowski. Great to see you tonight, Corey.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting a bigger picture and a fuller picture of exactly what's being alleged behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the underlying investigations continue. And I want to give you a chance to respond to the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee who says you're not showing up as he thought was planned. He said this yesterday. He said yesterday the committee was informed by counsel for Corey Lewandowski that he would be refusing to reappear before the committee to testify any further, despite an earlier pledge to do so. It will therefore be necessary for our committee to now move to compel Lewandowski's testimony, among other outstanding steps needed to advance the investigation. How do you respond?
Well, my response is very simple. I voluntarily appeared in front of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. I sat and answered questions for 8 hours. I offered to answer any questions they had, and what I did is I sent a letter back. And, you know, what happened is during that testimony that I provided, which should have been in public but was behind closed doors, they took continuous breaks, and Adam Schiff and his colleagues went out and leaked all of the information that I sat there and provided to the committee. So they have, you know, there is no honor amongst thieves, I guess, but, you know, they took the information that I gave to the committee, which ultimately could be public, and they released it for their own edification. And what I said was, look, I'll be happy to answer your questions. And what Congressman Schiff is not telling the American people, and I'll be happy to do it right here, is the questions that they had that I did not answer during that time, I submitted written answers to in the letter saying I didn't think I had to reappear after spending over 8 hours answering their questions.
Do you think he's being disingenuous?
I think he's a very disingenuous man. Yes, I do.
Do you think that the memos that have been released, both by the House Intel Committee, the majority, and also the memos that we've seen from Senators Grassley and Graham have painted the full picture, or would you also support the release of the Democratic memo now sitting, we understand, with the president for his consideration?
Look, if it was my choice, I would say more transparency, the better. I think at this point, you know, we should look at what the FISA application actually entailed that was taken to the court, because it is my understanding that part of that FISA application, which was supposedly somewhere between 60 and 90 pages long, contained information that was put in from the fake dossier. And if that is the case, there needs to be accountability, because it's my understanding of the rules of an application for a FISA warrant is there can be no information provided in that application that has not been verified. And if any part of that dossier was used, which we think it was, there should be accountability for the individuals who presented it to a judge.
All right, your name has come up quite a bit in the last couple of days with respect to the Rob Porter situation, so I want to give you a chance to respond to some allegations. The Daily Beast says this. It says the White House said the story was the product of a smear campaign being orchestrated against Porter by his political enemies. Among those they pinpointed was former Trump campaign manager and current outside advisor to the president, Corey Lewandowski, according to two sources familiar with the conversations. True or false?
Oh, it's 100% false. Look, I've met Rob Porter probably twice or three times in my life. We had a very nice, cordial conversation. I found him to be a very affable individual. I have no ill will towards Rob, and I wish him and his family the best in these difficult times.
Okay, and one other from Vanity Fair. It says that last night a source said that you called President Trump and urged him to fire General Kelly. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Look, I didn't speak to the president yesterday or the day before that. So, what happens, it's amazing that reporters, write these stories. Nobody called me to verify it. You can check the White House switchboard or any other information that you can. I didn't speak to the president at all this week. And so, these stories are just false. And look, they want to drag me into it for whatever reason. The truth is, I have nothing to do with what takes place in the White House right now. They have their own issues. I think they could have handled this much better. It's shameful the way that it was done. It should have been done more appropriately, and I think there should be accountability.
All right. Well, Washington is a very interesting place, as you know, these days. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right. The Senate has adjourned until midnight when the government funding is set to expire. We're going to head back to Capitol Hill for a look at what is next. It's gridlock for now, folks. The Senate has adjourned until midnight when government funding is set to expire. We've got senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergram with us to break down what we can expect. Listen, you're going to stay there all night. I have no doubt about it. Chad, where do we go now?
Well, there's going to be a procedural vote, not a vote to actually keep the government open, to approve this budget deal, but a procedural vote to break the filibuster at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's a procedural set of circumstances here that Senator Paul was objecting to. You can make the sun rise in the West if you can get unanimous consent in the Senate. That means you need all 100 senators to agree to something. Well, you had 99, but Senator Paul was the one fly in the ointment, and so he was able to delay things. They were hoping to vote on this this past afternoon. That's not going to happen. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, we're going to have a procedural vote. It needs 60 votes. And then probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, the Senate will vote to pass this bill and then shuttle this over to the House of Representatives. There's still a little bit of a question in the House as to whether this could pass. And the question is about getting the vote mixture right, the blend between Democrats and Republicans. We think that they're going to be able to pull this across the line. They're going to need about 150 Republicans, and I was just told in the past hour about 70 Democrats. However, there were a couple of senior sources who indicated to me that this might be in trouble and Democrats might not be able to deliver the votes. But we think that they'll pass this about 6 o'clock in the morning in the House of Representatives, Shannon.
And Chad, when I say this, I know literally people need to understand that you are going to stay there all night. All right, Chad, thank you very much. We'll check in with you again. All right, for more, let's bring in Washington Free Beacon contributing editor Daniel Halper and senior politics writer for U.S. News and World Report David Catanese. Thank you both for being here.
Great to be
on
here.
Shutdown Night. It's feeling a little Groundhog Day. Okay,
it's always shutdown night.
It is always shutdown night. We're always just a matter of time. Okay, so the minority leader over in the House, Nancy Pelosi, today said this in a presser. She said, "It's a good bill. I'm pleased with the product," but then she also said, "I'm not voting for it." So, David, where are we?
Well, we're going to be at, Donald Trump is going to have beaten Barack Obama. He's going to have 2 shutdowns under his belt, where Barack Obama only had 1. So that's the scorecard. And there will probably be more shutdowns in the future.
Sure we're done.
I don't think we're done, even this year. But I think where we're at now is, I think Chad laid it out very well. It's really the House that is going to be key. The Senate will probably pass this, but are there enough Republicans to join with Democrats? The interesting outlier is Nancy Pelosi, as you just pointed out. You've got the 3 leaders, Schumer, McConnell, and Ryan, all on the same page. Pelosi's sort of the outlier here. Should have made a stand yesterday because there's no DACA, there's no solution for the Dreamers in this, but she's sort of winking and giving permission, I think, tacit permission for Democrats to cross over and vote for it.
Because she was sort of asked about whether she was sort of whipping her members and what was going on, and she said, "I'm just letting them know how I feel about it." But she is giving them permission to vote elsewhere. Now, meanwhile, right now, the Senate is shut down in large part, and really in all part, because of Senator Rand Paul. And he said this today. He said, "The reason I'm here tonight is to put people on the spot. I want people to feel uncomfortable. I want them to have to answer people at home who said, 'How come you were against President Obama's deficits, and then how come you're in for Republican deficits?'" Daniel.
Well, in fairness to Rand Paul, I mean, he is reiterating the Republican position all through the Obama years, and all of a sudden, nobody seems to be too concerned about debts and deficits, and they're more concerned about keeping the government open. I guess that's what happens when you have the government to run. With Nancy Pelosi, it's different, right? So there's been a lot of focus on Republican fights, infighting among the Republicans and how they can't agree on this or that. Democrats are in a terrible position themselves. Nancy Pelosi, on the one hand, she has negotiated this deal that she's very pleased with. On the other hand, she has a base, she has of donors and supporters who want Donald Trump impeached, and the idea that she's working along with him is just so she can't. It's like she can't do it. She can't bring herself to actually do it, even when she likes a plan.
All right, someone else who is also not working with President Donald Trump anymore is Omarosa. And she is now doing some more reality TV. I'm going to play a little bit. This is from the show Big Brother.
I was haunted by tweets every single day. Like, what is he going to tweet next? All of the people around him attacked me. It was like, keep her away from it. Don't give her access. It's bad.
You like, there's like sinister music playing, and she's whispering because she says it's bad, if you couldn't hear it. So she didn't have good things to say about what's going on at the White House. But my question is, does she have an NDA, a non-disclosure, non-disparagement agreement? I don't know.
I don't know that, but it was interesting to see how the White House quickly responded. I mean, Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah had it in the can, ready to fire at her today, saying she's been here fired 3 times during The Apprentice, and we got rid of her again here. So he had pretty tough words for her. But I guess this is just the first of a bunch of episodes, so we might get teases, a little bits and pieces of Trump administration gossip, like as the world turns,
she's
right?
Really smart, because I think this is a voting thing, and so I think she's going to keep doing this, and so people are going to want to know more. They're not going to vote her off. They're going to want some more of these confessionals. She stays. Okay, we'll play what Raj Shah had to say at the White House briefing about Omarosa's claims.
Omarosa was fired 3 times on The Apprentice, and this was the 4th time we let her go. She had limited contact with the president while here.
Daniel, I feel like he was trying not to smile. There was some laughter there.
Without a straight face. Clearly, as David pointed out, it was a canned response that he saw coming. Omarosa does present a serious challenge. I mean, on a serious matter. Obviously, it's all funny, but on a serious matter, she does present a serious challenge. A lot of past administrations have disgruntled employees leave and write memoirs. Omarosa is very comfortable in front of the camera, as we can see, and she's willing to spill it all. And this presents a really serious challenge to the Trump the Trump administration, in a way that we haven't. I think we've seen various other challenges, but this is, in a way, it's unique. She's putting her face out there. She's taking the heat. And it could be really devastating in various ways.
Yeah, we'll see if it's more funny or more serious as this goes along, and whether she gets voted off or not. I guess we're going to have to figure out the show and start watching it, as long as it's not on 11 o'clock. All right, David and Daniel, thanks for staying with us late.
Thank you.
All right, you have seen the countdown clock throughout the show. We are under 30 minutes now. We're about 20 minutes now until the next government shutdown. It's going to be official. The conversation continues with our politics editor, Chris Steyerwaltz. Stick around. As we inch closer to midnight, that is when government funding is set to expire. We still have a lot more to cover. Joining me now, Fox News politics editor and author of the Halftime Report, Chris Steyerwaltz. Okay, so we have about 16 plus minutes.
Right.
Time is ticking. Okay, so this time around, who wins or loses? Because they may get it solved by morning, by the time people wake up. But right now, we are officially about to have another shutdown.
The easy answer in Congress is always this: America. Look, I don't mean to be too hard on them. But Republicans did run for a long time on fiscal restraint. Yeah. That was really their bones. Now, Lindsey Graham made a very impassioned case to you. I thought he was going to go tackle Rand Paul, run off the set. But he made a very impassioned case about why military funding is super important. And the Republicans definitely do that, and that's a good brand. But the 2 previous times that the Republicans did substantial tax cuts, you know what they followed them with? Spending increases. And deficits kablooey. Now, either we do care about them or we don't care about them, but one of the problems in America today is that partisanship blinds people to the necessities of government. It's too bad, but Republicans only care about deficits when Democrats are in power, and Democrats only care about deficits when Republicans are in power. Unfortunately, my children and my children's children and their children's children don't have a vote in Congress. Posterity gets no vote. So the easiest way out of every problem is to do what?
Spend money.
Spend money, borrow it if you don't got it.
But you know that there are plenty of people like Andy Biggs, the congressman out of Arizona that we talked to. There are plenty of them out there who are going to vote no. They think they're going to lose, but on principle they say that's what they're going to do.
And Nancy Pelosi's doing this stunt play where she runs out in front of the ball and says, I love this deal, though I personally am not voting for it. Please keep me as the minority leader, please, 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 and then frees her people to go make up for those Republican votes.
Okay, I want to make sure that I ask you about this connection with Sidney Blumenthal, Christopher Steele, the dirty dossier, all of that kind of stuff. Now, this is a little bit long, but I want to read it to set this up because the State Department official who is implicated in this whole thing has written a piece tonight saying, I want to explain what happened. Here's what he said. In late September, I spoke with an old friend, Sidney Blumenthal. We discussed Steele's reports. He showed me notes gathered by a journalist I did not know, Cody Shearer, that alleged the Russians had compromising information on Trump of a sexual and financial nature. On my own, I shared a copy of these notes with Steele to ask for his professional reaction. I agreed to let him keep a copy of the Shearer notes. I did not mention or share his notes with anyone at the State Department. I did not expect them to be shared with anyone in the U.S. government. But I later learned that Steele did share them with the FBI after the FBI asked him to provide everything he had on allegations relating to Trump, his campaign, and Russian interference in U.S. elections. I'm in no position to judge the accuracy of the information generated by Steele or Shearer, but he explains how things traveled through Sidney Blumenthal to the Steele dossier.
A great rule in life: block Sidney Blumenthal's phone calls. Just for America, just for you, never take a phone call from Sidney Blumenthal. It's always bad news. He's the hatchet man for the Clintons. He is he was the dirty dossier before there was a dirty dossier, and he has been a bag man and hatchet man for the Clintons. He did the worst of all of the corrupt stuff that the Clintons did in their heyday and all the things. Sidney Blumenthal was the point guy. For him to stick himself into this discussion and do what he did it doesn't impeach Steele yet. We don't know whether this impeaches Steele yet. But the fact that Hillary Clinton was aware that any of this was going on.
But do we know if she was?
Good point. That is a fair point, Counselor. We don't know, but that an intimate of hers, a person who did the wet work in her campaigns, that was known to her, and as we know from Benghazi and we know from Libya, all of the emails. Sidney Blumenthal was the most prolific emailer. The fact that he was aware of this investigation and was trying to interfere with it is another reason why Hillary Clinton, worst politician of my lifetime, and kept losing. And if she has queered this investigation, if Sidney Blumenthal has queered this investigation and it goes off the track, that's quite a capstone, is all I'd say.
Well, there's more information out there about that flow of information tonight in this piece. Okay, Christopher, well, thank you.
Power to the people.
Good to see you. All right, the shutdown's coming. All right, North Korea held a military parade ahead of the Winter Olympics opening ceremony. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger met with President Trump at the White House today to talk about the hostile regime. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us live to break all of it down. The president met with former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger today to discuss North Korea, China, and the Middle East. Kissinger has been outspoken on world issues recently, last month calling North Korea's nuclear program the, quote, most immediate challenge to international peace. North Korea is using this week's Winter Olympics as a show of unity, at least in part, with South Korea. So let's talk about the hostile regime with former ambassador to the UN and Fox News contributor, Ambassador John Bolton. Great to have you, sir.
Glad to be with you.
Okay, so this is interesting. We know that the president met with him today because he tweeted about it. We also have a tweet from a Democratic member of Congress, Ro Khanna, who identifies himself as an Obama alum. He said this a couple of days ago. American foreign policy has been based on the interventionist worldview of Henry Kissinger for far too long. We should return to the principles of George Washington and John Quincy Adams by pushing for restraint and diplomacy. So what do you make of the Kissinger-Trump summits on a somewhat regular basis?
Right, and I suppose Congressman Khanna wants to recreate the walls of the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean and protect us from the rest of the world. Look, I think it's important that the president speak with Henry Kissinger. He wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal recently where he made a critically important point where he said what we once said was unacceptable about North Korea's nuclear program now risks becoming irreversible. And I think it underlines the point that after 25 years of trying, we're down to the last possible chance here to stop North Korea from going nuclear. And it won't just be North Korea, it will be them selling that capability to the rest of the world. So it's a critical decision time for President Trump, and I think it's useful to have Henry Kissinger's thoughts.
What do you make of the big military parade that the North Korean leaders have put together ahead of the Olympics? They know the world is watching them right now. Is it a show of force? Who are they trying to send a message to?
Well, I think they're sending a message to the people of South Korea, and that despite all the propaganda which they've unquestionably enjoyed by participating in the Olympics, they still think of the military as number one, and it's intended to show that they have the capability. How long it would last, we don't know, to dissuade anybody from thinking that we can stop their nuclear weapons program.
Okay, another front of concern, a report from the UN talking about al-Qaeda. Even as ISIS is fading away, this is what they say: al-Qaeda affiliates remain the dominant terror threat in some regions, such as Somalia and Yemen, a fact demonstrated by a continuous stream of attacks and foiled operations. They're still very much out there, morphing even as ISIS seems to be winding down.
Well, I think, the terrorist groups, the Islamicist groups, they don't follow corporate-style organization charts. They come and they go, they ebb and they flow, they merge together, they sometimes work at cross purposes, they sometimes work together. I think the key point is that the ideology, the fervor of the Islamicist ideology has not died down and continues to spread even as the ISIS caliphate is defeated in all kinds of places, in the Afghan-Pakistan region, in Libya, in Yemen, still in Syria and Iraq, so that this threat remains. The terrorist threat changes all the time, but it remains grave.
It does. All right, Ambassador Bolton, always great to have you with us. Thank you, sir.
Glad to be with you.
All right, we are minutes away from a government shutdown officially. Some final thoughts on that when we return. Well, all eyes are on Capitol Hill. We're about to hit midnight here on the East Coast, and that will make the government shutdown official. All right, most watched, most trusted, and most grateful you spent the evening with us. Good night from Washington. For now, I'm Shannon Bream. This is a Fox News alert. The clock strikes midnight, meaning for the second time this year, we are facing a partial government shutdown. A vote from the Senate on a massive 2-year budget deal to attach to a short-term funding bill was expected earlier today, but the vote was held up by Kentucky Senator Republican Rand Paul. He's been demanding a vote on an amendment to keep budget caps in place. Leadership tried to make a deal with the senator while others came to the floor to complain, accusing Paul of showboating and effectively shutting down the government. It's official now. Government, all of this is going on as the White House Office of Management and Budget has directed federal agencies to prepare for a lapse in funding. The Senate right now is coming back into session and is expected to vote to end debate on the budget bill. The final vote on the bill is expected to take place, we think, after 2 a.m. this morning, and then it's over to the House. Now, here's what the math looks like. Fox News is told they'll need 150 Republicans, 70 Democrats in order for the bill to cross the finish line. House members have been told to prepare for votes between 3 and 6 a.m. this morning Eastern time. Liberals led by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi are protesting a lack of protections for illegal immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. House Republicans have also raised concerns over spending caps as well. So this is far from being a done deal. The House Freedom Caucus, the chamber's fiscally conservative wing, also opposes the bill out of concerns that it's going to further increase the nation's debt. Almost everybody agrees that is what's going to happen. So debate over those contentious issues will continue well into the early hours of the morning. But the final vote, we think around 6 a.m. Eastern time, that is when we'll learn if Congress can muster the votes to keep the government open. Stay with Fox News. We are following all the developments throughout the night. You see there, they're going back live in the Senate. We will keep you updated. We're going to take you back to regular programming, but check back here throughout the night for updates on the shutdown. It's official.